The truth is, most people misunderstand this. They look at the towering skyscrapers of modern commerce, the flashing green numbers on stock market tickers, and the heavily guarded vaults of the financial elite, and they surrender to a fundamental, paralyzing lie. They believe that money is a purely physical entity, a rare element mined from the earth or printed by secretive institutions, granted only to the exceptionally lucky or the ruthlessly privileged. They spend their entire lives in a grueling, breathless chase, running on an invisible treadmill that accelerates with every passing year, trading the irreplaceable, golden sands of their youth for a handful of paper that barely covers the cost of their own survival. This is the tragic illusion of the modern age, a collective hypnosis that keeps millions trapped in a suffocating cycle of quiet desperation, waking up exhausted and going to sleep anxious. But the narrative of make money shatters this illusion with the violent, liberating grace of a sledgehammer breaking through a prison wall. It begins not with a spreadsheet or a business plan, but by introducing an archetype we shall call the seeker, a modern individual drowning in a chaotic sea of digital information, desperately trying to decode the encrypted language of wealth. The seeker sits in a dimly lit room, illuminated only by the cold, blue glow of a computer monitor and the soft, forgiving halo of a ring light. Surrounding them are towering stacks of books, heavy, dense tomes on financial management, investment strategies, and the psychology of the affluent. They speak passionately into the silent, unblinking lens of a camera, synthesizing the profound wisdom of these texts, trying to project immense value out into the vast, echoing digital ether. They are exhausted, deeply frustrated by the glaring disconnect between the profound financial knowledge they consume daily and the static, unyielding nature of their own bank account. They have bought into the myth that hard work alone, the sheer, linear exchange of countless hours for a predictable wage, will eventually build an impenetrable fortress of security. But the brutal mathematics of reality never align. The month always seems to outlast the paycheck, and the dream of financial freedom remains a mirage shimmering on an unreachable horizon. It is in this crucible of intense frustration that the core revelation of the text strikes the seeker like a bolt of lightning illuminating a pitch-black landscape. The book does not offer a superficial, get-rich-quick formula, nor does it peddle the empty, fleeting platitudes of positive thinking. Instead, it demands a radical, almost terrifying cognitive restructuring. The seeker absorbs the defining, foundational thesis. Money is not merely paper or digital zeros. Money is the physical crystallization of human intellect, relentless labor, and applied time. This single, profound sentence completely upends their entire worldview. If money is truly crystallized energy, then the agonizing lack of money is not a lack of external, hoarded resources, but a tragic failure to properly harness, package, and convert internal, infinite energy. The seeker looks around their small room with new, piercing eyes. They realize, with a sudden rush of vertigo, that they have been sitting on a gold mine while begging for copper. They have been looking outward for capital, waiting for a savior, an angel investor, or a miraculous stroke of luck, completely blind to the immense, untapped reservoirs of capital residing within the folds of their own mind and their immediate physical environment. The narrative brutally forces the seeker to conduct a ruthless, uncompromising inventory of their existence. What do they actually possess? Society, with its rigid metrics of success, tells them they have nothing of value because they do not own sprawling real estate, a bustling factory, or a massive inheritance. But the book aggressively challenges this archaic definition of assets. The seeker possesses a voice capable of articulating highly complex financial concepts with clarity and passion. They possess the iron discipline to read, digest, and distill hundreds of pages of dense economic theory into digestible, engaging, and transformative narratives. They possess a camera, a high-quality microphone, and an internet connection, a suite of technological tools that kings and emperors of the past centuries could not have acquired with all the gold in their treasuries. Suddenly, the towering piles of books in the corner are no longer just bound paper, they are raw, unrefined materials waiting for the forge. The camera is no longer just a recording device, it is a global distribution channel with unlimited reach. The seeker's ability to analyze and present critical information is no longer just an eccentric hobby, it is a highly specialized, desperately needed manufacturing process. The paradigm shifts with seismic, world-altering force. The seeker fiercely transitions from a passive consumer of content to an active, sovereign producer of immense value. They finally understand that to make money from absolutely everything, one must first realize that absolutely everything has the latent potential to be monetized if, and only if, it solves a pressing problem or satisfies a deep desire for someone else. Analyzing this profound psychological pivot reveals the true, insidious nature of the poverty trap. Poverty is rarely a permanent, inescapable condition of the wallet, it is almost always a chronic condition of the mind. The towering psychological barrier that prevents intelligent, capable individuals from accumulating wealth is the deeply ingrained, toxic belief that their intrinsic skills, their unique voice, and their everyday tools are fundamentally worthless. The book acts as a polished mirror, reflecting a reality where the individual is a walking, breathing, limitless corporation. By radically redefining the concept of value, the individual violently reclaims their stolen agency. They are no longer a helpless victim of a rigged, macroeconomic system, they are an independent, powerful contractor in the bustling marketplace of human needs. The realization that one's lived experience, unique intellectual perspective, and carefully acquired knowledge are highly tradable commodities is the ultimate, intoxicating form of psychological emancipation. It destroys the victim mentality at its root and replaces it with a fierce, unwavering, and empowering accountability. As the seeker fully embraces this new, potent identity, the narrative introduces the most revolutionary and gripping concept of the text, the creation and cultivation of living money. The seeker has spent their entire adult life desperately chasing dead money, wages earned from a single, agonizing hour of physical or mental labor that are immediately consumed by the relentless friction of daily survival. Dead money does not grow, it merely disappears into the vacuum of bills and expenses, requiring the seeker to return to the punishing treadmill the very next morning. But living money is an entirely different, almost magical organism. Living money is a system, a digital product, or an intellectual asset that possesses the miraculous, compounding ability to self-replicate and generate value long after the initial burst of labor has been expended. The seeker stares at the digital files populating their computer desktop, the carefully edited videos explaining the nuanced strategies of personal finance, the passionate, articulate reviews of wealth-building literature. Previously, these were dismissed as mere digital detritus or a creative outlet. Now, viewed through the transformative lens of the book's philosophy, they are recognized as glowing, potent seeds of living money. The seeker begins to architect their sprawling digital empire with the precision of a master watchmaker. They do not build with heavy bricks and mortar. Subject to decay and geographic limitations, they build with indestructible pixels, sound waves, and global algorithms. They take their deep, hard-won understanding of financial management and forge it into engaging, high-retention digital assets. They release these assets into the vast, turbulent, and hungry ocean of the Internet. A video uploaded on a quiet Tuesday afternoon continues to attract viewers, generate advertising revenue, and build irreplaceable brand equity on a Sunday night while the seeker is fast asleep. This is the true alchemy of the modern digital age. The seeker has successfully transmuted their finite time and boundless intellect into a digital clone that works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without ever demanding a salary increase, taking a sick day, or complaining about working conditions. The living money begins to flow, a slow, hesitant trickle at first, but steadily growing into a roaring stream, powered by the relentless, compounding engine of digital leverage. The analysis of this crucial phase highlights the monumental distinction between traditional, analog labor and scalable, digital value creation. In the dusty industrial age, wealth was strictly tied to physical, unyielding constraints: how many widgets a massive machine could produce, how many grueling hours a worker could stand on the deafening assembly line. In the information age, as brilliantly depicted in the text, wealth is entirely decoupled from physical limitations. The marginal cost of replicating a digital video asset is effectively zero. But the potential audience reach is practically infinite. The seeker's transformative journey powerfully illustrates that the ultimate financial strategy is not to bleed oneself dry working harder, but to architect systems that work independently and exponentially. The paradigm of living money teaches that true, unassailable wealth is measured not by the static amount of cash hoarded in a dark vault, but by the robust, self-sustaining nature of the automated cash flows one has successfully engineered. It is a necessary, evolutionary shift from linear, exhausting accumulation to exponential, liberating growth. The emotional intensity of the narrative deepens profoundly as the seeker experiences the intoxicating, dizzying liberation of this new reality. They are no longer paralyzed by the suffocating fear of poverty, because they have finally deciphered the hidden mechanics of abundance. They look at the everyday, mundane objects around them, a smartphone, a spiral notebook, a quiet, empty room, and they no longer see a mundane, limiting reality. They see a boundless laboratory of wealth creation. They walk through the world with a heightened, electric state of awareness, their mind constantly, automatically scanning for market inefficiencies, painful problems to solve, and innovative new ways to package their financial expertise into highly valuable, irresistible offerings. The heavy, crushing burden of financial anxiety, a generational weight that has crushed the dreams of their ancestors, begins to lift from their shoulders. They feel a surging, unstoppable momentum building in their chest. The realization that they hold the literal power to manifest capital from thin air, or rather, from the highly disciplined, strategic application of their own intellect and voice, is a sensation of unparalleled, godlike power. The world is no longer a hostile, competitive environment to merely survive. It is a vast, fertile, and welcoming landscape waiting eagerly to be cultivated. Yet, this profound awakening is merely the genesis of the journey, the striking of the match in the dark. The seeker has learned the elegant theory of transformation. They have tasted the first sweet fruits of living money. They have shattered the invisible glass ceiling of their own deeply held limiting beliefs. But the treacherous path to enduring, monumental wealth is fraught with new, complex, and highly dangerous challenges. The transition from a solitary, inspired creator to a dominant master of the marketplace requires far more than just a shift in mindset. It demands rigorous, flawless execution, strategic foresight, and an unwavering, almost fanatical commitment to the true ethos of service. How does one protect these fragile, nascent streams of digital income from the volatile, unpredictable storms of the global economy? How does the seeker ensure that their relentless pursuit of wealth does not corrode their very soul, turning them into a miserable slave to the very digital systems they have so painstakingly built? The initial euphoria of discovery must now be urgently tempered by the cold, hard, unforgiving discipline of management and the heavy ethical responsibility that always accompanies immense financial power. The intellectual foundation has been laid. The illusions of the past have been burned away in the fire of realization, and the seeker now stands at the dizzying precipice of a vast, uncharted territory, completely ready to plunge into the deep, intricate mechanics of sustained, lifelong success. The seeker plunges into the chaotic, unforgiving arena of the open marketplace, armed with their newfound understanding of living money, only to collide with a terrifying, invisible wall of profound indifference. They have constructed their digital assets, meticulously crafted videos, deeply researched financial guides, eloquently spoken audio tracks, and released them into the wild, expecting a tidal wave of capital to immediately rush back into their accounts. Instead, they are met with the deafening, agonizing silence of a world that simply does not care. The analytics dashboards, once a source of exhilarating anticipation, now stare back with cold, stagnant zeros, mocking their ambitious efforts. A creeping, icy dread begins to wrap around the seeker's heart. Did they misinterpret the sacred text? Is the philosophy of transmuting intellect into capital merely a comforting fairy tale told to the gullible? They sit in the harsh glare of the monitor, experiencing the crushing, visceral pain of rejection, watching their precious living money slowly wither and die on the vine before it can even take root. They had built the machine. They had flipped the switch. But the gears violently ground to a halt. refusing to turn, refusing to yield the promised harvest of absolute financial freedom. It is in this dark, agonizing valley of commercial failure that the second, far more demanding revelation of the book violently grips the seeker by the shoulders. They realize, with a sudden, humiliating wave of clarity, that their entire approach has been fundamentally, fatally corrupted by a toxic strain of profound selfishness. They had asked the marketplace a completely backwards question: how can I extract money from you? The market, an infinitely complex, deeply intuitive organism, instantly detected this predatory, self-serving frequency and firmly, violently shut its doors. The text brutally exposes the ultimate, unbreakable law of sustained wealth, the law of absolute service. Money is never a primary cause, it is strictly a secondary, inevitable effect. It is the trailing shadow of genuine, transformative value provided to another human being. The seeker had been obsessed with the shadow, frantically trying to catch it with their bare hands, completely ignoring the massive, blinding light source required to cast it. To truly make money from everything, one must stop desperately hunting for cash and start obsessively hunting for the deep, unarticulated pain points, the silent frustrations, and the desperate, unmet needs of the massive, struggling collective. This profound psychological paradigm shift shatters the seeker's remaining ego into a million glittering pieces. They tear down their previous digital creations, recognizing them now as hollow monuments to their own vanity. And they start over with a terrifying, radical empathy. They begin to aggressively listen. They plunge into the forums, the comment sections, the desperate pleas of people drowning in consumer debt, paralyzed by inflation, and terrified of their impending financial future. The seeker stops trying to sound like a brilliant, untouchable guru and instead becomes a dedicated, compassionate servant. They take their deep, hard-won financial literacy and carefully repackage it not as a product to be sold, but as a desperately needed lifeline to be thrown into the freezing, turbulent waters. They create content that meticulously guides a terrified single mother out of credit card debt. They build a straightforward, accessible system that helps a struggling college student understand the miracle of compound interest. They completely remove their own desire for immediate compensation from the equation, focusing entirely, maniacally, on generating a massive, undeniable positive impact in the lives of total strangers. Analyzing this agonizing but necessary evolution reveals the supreme, undeniable paradox of capitalism: the fastest, most reliable trajectory to unimaginable, generational wealth is a complete, unyielding focus on the enrichment of others. When an individual operates from a space of extraction, they are constantly fighting a brutal, exhausting war of friction against a skeptical, defensive public. Every transaction is a battle. Every sale is a manipulation. But when an individual operates from a space of absolute service, the fundamental physics of the marketplace dramatically invert. The friction entirely disappears. The public lowers its shields. Customers transform from guarded targets into fiercely loyal advocates. The living money does not need to be painfully extracted, it is joyfully, willingly surrendered as a natural, deeply felt expression of profound gratitude. The seeker learns that the most impenetrable, heavily fortified business mode in existence is not a patented technology or a massive advertising budget. It is a community of people whose lives have been measurably, undeniably improved by your existence. Wealth, therefore, is not a measure of what you have forcefully taken from the world, but an accurate, mathematical reflection of what you have selflessly given to it. As the seeker fully embodies this radical ethos of service, the stagnant gears of the marketplace suddenly shriek to life, catching momentum with a terrifying, breathtaking velocity. The lifelines they cast into the digital ocean are eagerly caught. Viewership violently spikes. Testimonials begin to flood their inbox. Stories of families avoiding bankruptcy, individuals making their very first investments, people finally sleeping soundly through the night because of the knowledge the seeker provided. And trailing closely behind this massive wave of human impact comes the tidal wave of capital. The living money multiplies exponentially, pouring into their accounts with a relentless, automated consistency that defies all their previous, limited logic. They have successfully turned their innate empathy, their disciplined intellect, and their technological tools into a roaring, unstoppable engine of continuous monetization. But just as the intoxicating fumes of this monumental success threaten to lull them into a dangerous state of euphoric complacency, the narrative sharply pivots, introducing a new, deeply insidious enemy that destroys more empires than any external competitor ever could: the devastating, silent erosion of uncontrolled lifestyle inflation. The seeker stands in the center of their sudden, overwhelming abundance, holding more capital than they have ever seen in their entire life. And they feel the ancient, primal pull of reckless consumption. The societal programming that equates success with the immediate acquisition of depreciating luxury goods screams in their ears. They feel the desperate, burning urge to upgrade their living situation, to purchase the sprawling, excessive mansion, the roaring sports car, the visible, glittering badges of newly minted status to prove to the world that they have finally arrived. But the rigorous discipline of the text violently intervenes, striking them with the sobering reality of financial defense. Earning massive amounts of capital is merely the aggressive, offensive half of the grand financial game. The defensive half, the quiet, unglamorous art of retaining and protecting that capital, is where the true, enduring dynasties are forged. The book warns that spending living money on dead, decaying liabilities is a tragic act of financial infanticide. It is taking the brilliant, hard-working soldiers of your wealth army and pointlessly slaughtering them on the altar of temporary, fleeting ego validation. The seeker must now learn the excruciating, ironclad discipline of the golden goose. The massive streams of income they have generated are the golden eggs, the automated systems and digital assets are the goose. To spend the principal, to wildly inflate their lifestyle to match their new income, is to slowly starve the goose to death. Instead, the seeker adopts a Spartan, fiercely protective mentality regarding their cash flow. They forcefully decouple their personal identity from their material possessions. They realize that true, unassailable status is not found in the logos they wear or the vehicles they drive, but in the absolute, sovereign freedom of their time and the impenetrable security of their investments. They take the roaring torrents of their new income and immediately, ruthlessly redirect them into fortified, wealth-preserving vehicles. They purchase appreciating real estate. They acquire broad, stable market index funds. They buy equity in other promising businesses. They are no longer just a creator of digital assets. They are rapidly evolving into a sophisticated, multi-layered capital allocator. They are building a massive, interlocking fortress of diversified wealth that can easily withstand the inevitable, cyclical downturns of the global economy. The analysis of this critical defensive posture exposes the tragic, fatal flaw of the newly rich, the catastrophic failure to understand the fundamental difference between making money and keeping money is why countless lottery winners, professional athletes, and sudden digital sensations inevitably plunge back into the dark abyss of poverty. The human brain is evolutionarily wired for immediate, sensory gratification, constantly seeking the quick, intensely pleasurable dopamine hit of a new purchase. The philosophy of make money demands a violent, conscious override of this primitive biological programming. It requires the individual to elevate their psychological time horizon from the immediate, impulsive present to the distant, legacy-building future. By aggressively reinvesting their profits, the seeker is actively building secondary and tertiary layers of living money. Their original digital assets fund their real estate acquisitions, the rental income from the real estate funds their stock market portfolio, the dividends from the portfolio fund their daily living expenses. This is the ultimate, breathtaking architecture of complete financial invincibility. They have woven a dense, impenetrable web of automated cash flow that completely insulates them from the terrifying friction of the labor market. However, as the seeker's financial fortress grows taller and more impenetrable, throwing massive, cool shadows over the anxieties of their past, a new, deeply subtle psychological shadow begins to creep into their soul. The relentless, obsessive pursuit of optimization, the constant, manic tracking of conversion rates, asset valuations, and compounding interest begins to exact a heavy, unseen toll on their humanity. They find themselves increasingly isolated, viewing every single human interaction through the cold, calculating lens of potential monetization or return on investment. The vibrant, chaotic colors of life begin to drain away, replaced by the sterile, binary logic of profit and loss. They have mastered the complex mechanics of converting everything into capital, but they are terrified to realize they might be inadvertently converting their own warm, beating heart into a cold, metallic ledger. The narrative prepares to guide the seeker through the final, most profound, and deeply spiritual crucible of the text. They must learn the agonizingly difficult art of balancing immense, towering wealth with genuine, grounded human happiness, discovering that a life obsessed solely with the relentless accumulation of living money can quickly devolve into a deeply impoverished, spiritually dead existence. The true ultimate test is not merely achieving absolute financial freedom, but retaining the capacity to actually experience the joy, connection, and profound meaning that such freedom was supposed to secure. The seeker sits in the center of their impregnable financial fortress, a masterpiece of modern architecture paid for entirely in cash, surrounded by the invisible, humming machinery of their automated wealth. The screens in their immaculate, climate-controlled office display a relentless, hypnotic upward trajectory of compounding graphs, a visual symphony of their total victory over the marketplace. They have successfully executed the blueprint. They have taken the raw, unrefined ore of their intellect, their voice, and their time, and they have spun it into an empire of self-replicating digital gold. Yet, as they stare out through the floor-to-ceiling windows at a breathtaking sunset, a violently beautiful splash of crimson, bruised purple, and dying gold across the evening sky, a terrifying, icy sensation grips their chest. Instead of feeling a profound, soul-expanding awe at the sheer majesty of the natural world, their highly conditioned brain automatically begins to calculate the agonizing opportunity cost of standing still. They silently compute the exact fraction of a percentage drop in their hourly revenue generation caused by taking 10 minutes to watch the sun disappear instead of relentlessly optimizing a new, high-converting digital sales funnel. This is the terrifying, silent curse of the ultimate accumulator, the insidious, creeping disease that infects those who win the financial game but lose the narrative of their own humanity. They have taken the book's premise to its most extreme, pathological conclusion. They have literally transformed absolutely everything into money, including the very essence of their own soul. Every single aspect of their existence has been brutally subjected to the cold, unforgiving scalpel of monetization. Their personal hobbies, once a source of quiet, unadulterated joy, have been rigorously structured into profitable side hustles, complete with content calendars and engagement metrics. Their friendships and social interactions have been carefully, mathematically curated into strategic networking nodes, where every conversation is unconsciously weighed for its potential return on investment, its capacity for future leverage. Their precious, fleeting time on Earth is no longer experienced as a continuous, flowing river of conscious experience, but is rigidly, neurotically divided into billable intervals and productivity sprints. The living money flows into their accounts in massive, roaring rivers, filling the digital vaults to the brim. But the inner, spiritual landscape of the seeker has become a scorched, desolate, barren desert. They are suffering from the profound, aching malnutrition of the spirit that exclusively afflicts those who tragically forget that massive capital is merely a means of transportation, a high-speed vehicle meant to carry you toward a meaningful destination, and not the final, desolate destination itself. They have built a towering, glittering castle of absolute financial security, only to realize, with a crushing wave of claustrophobia, that they have accidentally locked themselves inside the deepest, darkest dungeon of that very castle. The narrative forces a brutal, unflinching confrontation with the mirror once again, perhaps the most painful confrontation of the entire arduous journey. The seeker realizes, with the sting of a physical blow, that a life lived exclusively, obsessively on a spreadsheet is not actually a life. It is merely a complex accounting exercise awaiting the inevitable audit of mortality. The final, most transcendent, and deeply guarded lesson of the text finally emerges from the long shadows of their opulent isolation. The ultimate, highest goal of learning how to flawlessly make money from absolutely everything is to eventually reach a state of divine, Untouchable sovereignty where you no longer have to make money from anything. The highest, most pristine, and incredibly rare tier of true wealth is the absolute, unquestionable freedom to actively choose to do things that have a guaranteed, massive negative return on investment, simply and entirely because they are beautiful, deeply meaningful, profoundly compassionate, or morally right. The seeker understands that the relentless engine of capitalism, which they have so brilliantly mastered, is a magnificent servant but a tyrannical, soul-destroying master, if they do not consciously, violently wrest control of the steering wheel from the algorithm of endless accumulation. They will die as the richest, most miserable entity in the graveyard. With a trembling but resolute hand, the seeker begins the agonizing, beautiful, and deeply terrifying process of dismantling the dense psychological scaffolding of their own ingrained greed. They physically step away from the glowing, addictive dashboards of their wealth generation systems. They intentionally, deliberately plunge themselves into activities that cannot possibly be scaled, monetized, outsourced, or leveraged for digital clout. They sit on a worn wooden bench in a crowded, noisy local public park and read a physically decaying, analog book just for the pure, unadulterated poetry of the printed words, actively refusing to highlight any actionable data points or business strategies. They find a struggling, desperate, fiercely ambitious young entrepreneur who reminds them of their own hungry past. And they quietly mentor this individual, pouring countless hours of their incredibly valuable, highly monetizable time into this single human being without asking for a percentage of their future company. Without filming the emotional interaction for a viral marketing campaign, without seeking any public recognition whatsoever, they experience a strange, terrifying, and ultimately intoxicating sensation rushing back into their veins, the raw, electric, deeply human joy of pure, unadulterated giving without the suffocating expectation of receiving. Analyzing this final, critical, and profoundly necessary phase uncovers the immense philosophical depth hidden meticulously beneath the pragmatic, commercial exterior of the book. The long, brutal journey of transforming everything into money is ultimately, in its purest essence, a grueling masterclass in self-discovery, psychological mastery, and, eventually, complete ego dissolution. The initial, foundational stages of the journey strictly require a hyper-focus on the self, aggressively identifying personal intellectual assets, building robust personal systems, violently protecting personal wealth from the corrosive forces of inflation and consumerism. But the final, ultimate stage demands the complete, unconditional surrender of that meticulously constructed self. The massive streams of living money, once heavily relied upon as a thick, impenetrable shield to protect the fragile seeker from the terrifying, grinding friction of the impoverished world, must eventually be transformed into a wide, sturdy bridge that connects them deeply and vulnerably back to the collective suffering and triumph of humanity. If the massive accumulated wealth is not purposefully converted into lasting legacy, into localized impact, into the active alleviation of pain for others, it inevitably stagnates, becoming a toxic, heavy sludge that rots the human vessel that holds it. The book subtly, masterfully reveals that true, lasting happiness is biologically and spiritually incompatible with endless hoarding. The human spirit is fundamentally designed by nature to be a flowing conduit of energy and grace, not a dark, sealed vault of stagnant resources. As the seeker deeply embraces this profound, earth-shattering spiritual shift, the vibrant, chaotic colors of the real world violently rush back into their perception. More saturated, brilliant, and breathtaking than ever before in their entire existence. They are no longer a frantic, starving hunter desperately chasing the fleeting shadows of capital through the digital woods. They are a peaceful, grounded, deeply powerful steward of massive, flowing resources. Their vast business empire continues to grow, compound, and expand, but it is no longer driven by the frantic, neurotic, cortisol-soaked energy of basic survival or the hollow, fragile vanity of the ego. It is now driven by a calm, unshakable, deeply rooted purpose. They use their massive financial influence and vast digital reach to silently fund local educational initiatives in underprivileged neighborhoods, To build technological platforms that elevate and amplify the suppressed voices of the marginalized. To aggressively fund art and scientific research that challenges and inspires the collective human consciousness but offers no immediate, tangible financial return. The living money has finally, beautifully evolved into its final, most magnificent, and permanent form, legacy money. It is a form of highly conscious capital that not only sustains the physical, luxurious lifestyle of the seeker but actively, aggressively elevates the spiritual and material condition of the entire human race. They have finally closed the massive, gaping loop between immense financial power and profound human empathy. The narrative gracefully brings the breathless reader to a breathtaking, panoramic, high-altitude view of the seeker's fully realized, incredibly potent existence. They are walking slowly through a bustling, crowded city square, completely surrounded by the chaotic, beautiful, deafening symphony of everyday human life. They know, with an absolute, unshakable, mathematical certainty, that they could easily monetize every single interaction they are witnessing, every passing glance, every whispered conversation, every unfulfilled desire written on the faces of the rushing crowd. They possess the formidable, razor-sharp skills, the strategic, highly trained intellect, and the massive digital infrastructure to extract immense financial value from the very air they are currently breathing. But they choose, in a supreme, triumphant act of ultimate sovereign freedom, to simply smile, take a deep breath, and let it all be. They have completely, utterly conquered the desperate, clawing, primitive need to endlessly acquire. They have flawlessly mastered the intricate, ruthless, and highly complex game of global commerce. And having undeniably won the game at the highest possible level, they are finally, blissfully free to put down the heavy controller and simply, joyfully play in the infinite, boundless, and beautiful sandbox of human life. The ultimate meaning that bien moi tout en tien, make money, fiercely intends to convey to its readers is a revolutionary manifesto of complete personal, psychological, and financial liberation achieved through the highly strategic application of inner intellectual value and boundless, empathetic service. The core, beating message is that immense wealth is never a scarce, external physical resource to be desperately hunted in the outside world, but an abundant, infinite, internal energy to be meticulously cultivated and unleashed from within. The book serves as a profound, transformative psychological blueprint, teaching that by systematically identifying your unique intellectual and experiential assets, courageously packaging them to solve the agonizing problems of others, and fiercely protecting the resulting cash flows with iron discipline, you can absolutely engineer your own impenetrable financial invincibility. Yet, its deepest, most profound revelation is that the ultimate, true purpose of acquiring this absolute financial freedom is to permanently, irrevocably free your mind from the exhausting tyranny of money itself, allowing you to dedicate the remainder of your fleeting life to profound service, authentic human connection, and the creation of an enduring, undeniably positive legacy that will echo in eternity. You do not master wealth to acquire the world, you master wealth to finally own yourself.